and welcome to today's segment of The Power of Money. I'm your host, Michelle Graves, affectionately known for over the last 30 years as the Money Lady throughout the United States and internationally. And as always, I remain totally committed to educating my viewers on money topics, as well as this year we're expanding into health issues and spiritual issues because they are an integral part of how you live on this planet called Earth. As I've shared over the years, wealth means nothing if you're not healthy. Believe me, wealth means very little if you're incapacitated and cannot get better. And on that note, I segue into today's segment where we're going to be exploring the world of long-term care. And I brought as my guest today, as always, I go all the way to the top to get the best. And my guest today is Randy Gallas, who's been on in the past, but we're going to do an update today. Just a little bit of background about Mr. Gallas and why I am so impressed with his credentialing as well as his work, and I think you will be as well. He is from Pennsylvania. He is retired after 25 years with the U.S. Air Force. He's been 10 years as a financial planner, 12 years as a certified specialist in long-term care, and 8 years he has been president of the Long-Term Care Insurance Agency located in Kettering, Ohio. This agency is over 17 years old and is the largest independent agency for long-term care in the state of Ohio. So I'm honored to have him here as my guest today, and we will be talking about the state of long-term care in 2017, things you need to know as we move forward. Glad to have you here.
Well, thank you, Michelle. Thank you so much. And
Okay.
Happy New Year to you as well.
Thank you so much, and
Yeah.
Happy New Year to you, Mr. Gallas.
You're quite welcome. Yeah,
Okay.
thanks for inviting me.
Surely. Today I'd like to talk about some key subjects, one being health care and long-term care. I want to talk about the long-term care challenges. I'd like to explore key developments in 2016. 2016 was kind of a rocky year. Legislative efforts, solutions, and finally the future of long-term care. Is that enough?
That is quite quite an agenda.
I know, but it is so necessary for our viewers to have this information as we move forward. So let's talk about long-term care in review.
Okay, perfect. I put together just for this presentation some slides.
Okay.
So our viewership can kind of take a look at some of the differences between long-term care and health insurance, and just to have a definitional sort of thing, just an understanding of what is long-term care.
Okay.
And then, of course, what are those challenges that we as Americans face in the long-term care, what I call crisis mode, because we're heading towards that.
I think that's a good assessment.
It is.
I think we're heading
Let's
there.
first of all, I have a little slide, if we could go to slide number 1 here,
Okay.
that shows the differences between health insurance and long-term care insurance. So if we could go to that, it'd be the second slide.
Okay.
Well, basically, while he's putting that up there,
Okay, it looks like it's
health
up here.
insurance basically is something that if you get sick, you go to your doctor, you get well again, you're back in the mainstream of
Okay.
life. Okay, so that's really what they call acute care situations, okay, where your health insurance would pay for that.
Okay.
Or in some cases, Medicare would pay for that because
Okay.
it's short-lived. It's not something that's going to be extended, okay?
Okay.
When we talk long-term care, now we're talking more about an ongoing sort of illness that's going to last for something longer than 90 days.
Okay.
So when we're talking long-term care, we're talking about a chronic condition. It's no
So it
longer
has to
acute.
exceed 90 days.
It has to exceed 90 days.
Okay.
And that can be anywhere from something like an Alzheimer's situation, of course we're familiar with, dementia, a stroke, or even an accident that could imperil us for several months.
Okay.
So that's where the long-term care policies would come into play. So,
Well, please, if you would mind clarifying for the benefit of my viewers,
sure,
because you made mention of Medicare.
correct.
And Medicare, if you'll go on and explain what Medicare is versus long-term care.
Good question. Medicare is something that's short-term.
Okay.
Typically, over the age of 65, when you qualify for Medicare, it's about 100 days. So that's all you really have is 100 days of coverage. And those first 20 days, basically, would be paid at 100%, where you would have no out-of-pocket expense.
Okay.
So,
So the first 20 days, Medicare, which is for people 65
and older.
older.
Correct.
It is health care.
It's basically health care.
Okay.
Exactly.
So the first 20 days of hospitalization,
Correct.
they will pay typically 100%.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then you have those 80 days that are remaining.
Okay.
And so in that 80 days, you can purchase what they call a Medicare supplement.
Okay.
So if you purchased a supplement, then the supplement benefit would be about $160 a day.
Okay. Out of a total cost of, because hospitals are more than $160 a day.
Correct, correct.
Okay.
So basically, the Medicare supplement would pay $160, and you would pay whatever the
difference is.
Correct.
Okay.
But the problem here is when you get to day 100, then what happens? Then you pull out what they call the checkbook.
My goodness.
And that's where you would start paying for the care on your own.
Okay, so now let me ask you this question because it's one that I hear often, and that is a person, if their condition does not improve, there's a caveat on that Medicare, isn't it?
That's true. If the condition does not improve, then Medicare would discontinue payments.
Okay, so they have to show improvement.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay, and if they don't,
Right.
you're on your own.
You're on your own with all we call the checkbook.
The checkbook. Here comes the checkbook.
Here comes the checkbook.
Okay.
Yeah.
All righty. Good, good, good.
So again, just to kind of look at some triggers, what would trigger a long-term care policy, we'll go to the next slide, and it'll show the
physical
triggers there.
impairments.
Correct.
Okay, good,
And
good,
here, basically, is what they call, there's 6 triggers, basically the things that you and I did this morning that we don't think about. Things like bathing, dressing, eating, personal hygiene, transferring, getting up and down, and things like that. If you can't perform 2 out of 6
of those things,
that would be considered a long-term care event.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, a lot of people have problems if they are older, or not necessarily older, but if they're dealing with physical challenges, they would have problems with bathing and eating and those kinds of things. But that is, you have to have 2 out of 6. Is that correct?
That's correct, Michelle, and that's a HIPPA definition.
Okay.
And that's a standardized definition across the long-term care industry.
Okay, 2 out of 6.
2 out of the 6.
So of the let me just go back through these for the benefit of viewers. Now, if you're having problems bathing, dressing, eating, toileting, transferring, meaning going from your bed to walking, or maintaining continence, 2 out of 6. 2 out of 6 lasting over 90 days.
Correct.
Then you cross into the arena called long-term care.
You do.
Okay.
And there's another thing that's called a cognitive impairment.
Okay.
The thing about a cognitive impairment is something that is like what? Dementia.
Okay.
Some sort of an Alzheimer's or some sort of a memory loss condition. That is considered an automatic trigger. So when you're looking at a cognitive impairment, my mom could do all those things above. She was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, but she just couldn't remember when she had breakfast. So the key thing here is a cognitive impairment is an automatic trigger, and again, that is a standardized definition across all long-term care carriers. Okay?
So let me understand with regard to this Alzheimer epidemic, because it has become an epidemic.
It has.
Geez.
It has.
And my question is, does a person have to meet the parameters of a 90-day if a doctor diagnoses them with this condition just as a part of their physical examination process?
No, that is basically an automatic trigger. So
automatic.
It's an automatic trigger, and it's because it requires supervision and the safety of that individual. So you would not have to satisfy that 90-day criteria.
We'll talk about that more because Alzheimer can drag on for 20 years.
You know, the scary thing, the scary thing, Michelle, about Alzheimer's, according to the Alzheimer's Association, every 68 seconds, someone is diagnosed with Alzheimer's.
Pinch me if it's me.
every 68 seconds. You know, I thought about that and I thought that's just unbelievable.
Horrible.
And it is, like the word you mentioned, an epidemic. It really is becoming an epidemic, and unfortunately there's no cure. They can slow the progress down, but basically it's something that everybody's concerned about.
Well, the thing that, and I don't want to digress because there's some good information that needs to be disseminated. The thing that concerns me is that we all tend to operate as if that elephant is not in the room, and that it's not going to happen to my family, or this can't be. But the reality is that it is happening, and a person that has that diagnosis, you have to deal with that reality.
You do. You do have to deal with that. Exactly.
And the caregiving role shifts.
It does. It does. And there's different levels, obviously, of Alzheimer's and different types of dementia out there. So it is something that the insurance carriers are concerned about.
I'm sure they are.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on.
Sure. So today, I think one of the biggest questions that you had for me today is, why is long-term care an issue today?
Yeah, I brought that to your attention because of the aging of America. The fact that I'm a baby boomer, so are you. Just definitionally, viewers, baby boomers are people born after World War II up into 1963. We're the largest group of population in the United States, and we are all moving into retirement quickly and bringing everything along with it.
Exactly. In fact, the next slide that we have here is like you just mentioned, the fact that the aging of America is a concern. You're right. This morning, when you and I woke up, 10,000 other baby boomers woke up. And they turned 65. Now, there's an issue there. I mean, when they turn 65, people think more like, okay, now I'm entitled for my Social Security, entitled for, Medicare. And so the thing that most Americans aren't thinking about is, what impact does that have on the federal government?
Oh.
Because we're talking here about an audience of about 80 million baby boomers.
Yes.
Close to 80 million baby boomers. And we already know that we have issues when it comes to in the federal government.
Yes.
So if you don't take responsibility for your care, we're going to kind of be in that quote unquote crisis mode.
Well, I will tell you, if the baby boomers, and we were and are the Pepsi generation, the Arby's, I'll do it my way, and the issue of aging and all of the things that go along with it, there are body parts that can't be fixed. It's not like a car. I mean, there's stuff that happens when you get older.
True.
That are just really different.
True.
And young people don't get it, but keep living. So we're looking at about 78 million Americans. That's a lot of people.
That's a lot. It's one of the biggest generationals, gaps that we've had in terms of needing care.
Okay.
So I call it, we're heading towards what we call the silver tsunami, so to speak.
Oh, God.
So, but anyway.
Okay.
But today alone, there's about 13 million Americans right now that are receiving some form of long-term care services.
Okay.
And that could be in home care, it could be assisted living, or even skilled care. But the projections are that 13 million in about 10 to 15 years could explode to about 20 million Americans needing care, meaning, again, placing more burden on the system, so to speak. So this is
families.
And our families, exactly,
yeah,
and our
because
families.
most people, it's been my experience over the last 30 years that most people are ill prepared for what's going on when it happens. It's not exactly like, boom, I got heart problems. You can tell them it started earlier than it manifested, but here it is.
Exactly.
Okay.
And today, I have a slide here that shows about who's paying for this long-term care. You know, the perception of Americans think that Medicare pays for long-term care. I have to state that to the audience. Medicare does not pay for long-term care.
Say it again.
Medicare does not pay for long-term care. So you have to take responsibility for your care after that 90 days or 100 days or whatever is up. then you basically would begin paying for your care. There are certain situations where Medicare would, once that ends, then of course you get into the Medicaid environment, okay? And so if you're in the Medicaid environment, that's even a different type of qualification for that.
Okay, now Medicaid, just for the benefit of you viewers, Medicaid is a government-sponsored plan for poor people, which is last resort. And you cannot have anything to qualify for Medicaid, period, because it is a government underwritten long-term care plan.
It is.
Yeah, it is.
I look at it as the last resort
It
plan.
is definitely the last resort because you're going to be broke. Everything you accumulated is out the door.
Exactly, exactly. So,
painful. I mean, that's horrible. Okay.
So yeah, and here, back to the slide again, there's another thing here about how the pay for this. Well, a lot of Americans think, well, we'll just use our Social Security check to pay for that. Now, Michelle, you and I know that the average Social Security check is about what? $2,000,
yeah,
maybe $3,000, depending on how long you've worked in the workplace. But the cost of care is double or even triple that. So the Social Security check will not cover all of the cost of long-term care.
Right.
So
what is the typical long-term care cost, by the way, for a person that needs care?
And now I have to use that word called it depends.
It depends,
It depends,
okay.
and it depends on the level of care you're receiving and what state you're actually in receiving care.
Okay.
Here in Ohio, in the Dayton area, the cost of care can be anywhere from $5,000 to $6,000 a month to $12,000 a month. We have a facility here that basically for the Alzheimer's, it's about $12,000 a month for care, and if you do the math on that, that's close to $150,000 a year.
They're bankrupt.
In several years, you would be bankrupt.
You're bankrupt.
Right.
And then you're on Medicaid.
And then you're on Medicaid.
Yeah, you're
So
bankrupt.
that's not how we planned it.
No.
That's not how we planned to enjoy our, golden years in life, so to speak, or.
Whew.
So, and then of course the last thing down here that I had on that chart was in terms of who pays, about 72%, and I know that we're talking about the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare here, which may be short-lived over the next few weeks or months or whatever, but it's surprising that a lot of individual Americans think that the Affordable Care Act actually pays for their long-term care. It does not. It does not. It's not part of the the care.
Right.
So anyway.
Anybody in shock yet? Okay, it's okay if you are, because first time I was introduced to this information, I just kind of sat down and said to myself, what the heck? Okay.
Right, right. Well, let's take a look here real quick in the next slide. It just kind of shows the impact on the cost of care. Again, a lot of Americans are just maybe out of touch on what that cost of care would be today and even in the future. But just a typical nursing home cost, like you mentioned before, just an average cost here, $85,000 a year. Okay. Semi-private room, about $76,000 a year, and assisted living, where you wouldn't really need 24/7 supervision, but you may need help with some of your bathing, or you may need help with medication management or something. Then we're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of $45,000 an average. And then, of course, home care. Most of the people that we talk to, they prefer to have their care at home.
Of course,
we all do.
of
We all
course.
do. We're comfortable there. So
It's a familiar.
and we're familiar with the surroundings and everything. And that cost can be, if it's a husband and wife and one of them is working, to have somebody there, stay at home, could be as much as $50,000 a year or more. So it is basically, so if you're thinking or planning on using your assets or investments to pay for that, depending upon how long you would need that care, you could devastate a financial plan quickly.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, you would, or else you're going to devastate your family.
Exactly.
One or the other. Okay.
I have the next chart. If we put up the next chart, it basically shows now from just from a financial planning standpoint, if that cost of care in the next several years is around $300 a day, and the average length of the need is about 3 years,
Okay.
you're looking over $300,000 per person. So if you have a modest or well put together, portfolio, retirement portfolio, you may want to take a look at that or talk to your financial planner about that, because it will liquidate that portfolio rapidly. And of course, as you saw in that chart, that's just today.
Right.
And as time goes on in the future, that cost of care could easily exceed $400 or $500 a day.
Well, I was looking at this chart, and actually in 10 years, it takes you over $1 million. And that's based on a $300 a day, not inflation adjusted figure.
There you go. And if you had an Alzheimer's situation, which could be anywhere from a year to 10 years. I mean, President Reagan, if you recall,
had
I do
Alzheimer's
recall.
For 13
years.
Yeah, Nancy ran the
years.
government.
Right,
Yeah.
13 years. So it is a crisis.
Yeah.
In terms of not only the financial impact of this, but across the industry as well. So I think that's kind of what puts us into one of the things that you wanted to talk about today, and that's like some of the challenges that have occurred over the past year in the long-term care market.
Right, right. And that's why I wanted to have you here, because I am not ignorant as an advisor myself and a believer in long-term care. I'm just believing it, that we are in crisis mode because so many people are ill-informed. They think that somebody's going to pay for it, and somebody will. It'll either be you, an insurance company, or Medicaid. Aren't those the three options?
Those are the three options.
Medicaid, you got to be broke.
Correct.
The insurance company, you got to make premiums.
Correct.
Or yourself, which I call, you're not broke now, but you will be. Am I right?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
All righty, here we go.
So let's take a look at some of what I call the long-term care challenges. There has been a little cloud of uncertainty, obviously, in the long-term care market. We've heard and you've read in the news where some of the carriers were leaving the business. And some of the reasons why they were leaving the business, we'll get into that a little bit later here. But we've seen large premium increases anywhere from 10 to 90% on policies. We've seen limits on some of the benefits, and some of the pay plans have been changed a little bit and structured differently than they were 30, 40 years ago. And then we've also seen an introduction of gender pricing. Females, believe it or not, the data, we have more data today than we've ever had on long-term care. So as a result of that, we found out that on all the policies and claims that are out there, almost 70% of all the claims are female related. I hate to say that.
Oh, no, it's okay, because we do outlive you all. Of course, men say we kill you, but we do outlive you.
As a result of that, the insurance industry had to structure or restructure some of the premiums.
Okay.
So in most cases, female policies will cost more than a male policy today. Okay. And then the tighter underwriting as well. We've seen the insurance industry tighten down some of the underwriting criteria than they have in the past. So we've seen.
Can you give an example?
Yeah, I guess you could say that if you had like what we call a mini stroke or a TIA, you've heard that. Most of the carriers wouldn't have a problem with that. And so today we're seeing where that mini stroke or TIA may be something that would no longer get you a policy, so you might be uninsurable as a result of that. So we're seeing them tighten down on some of that criteria, which we haven't seen before.
Okay.
And also, when you're looking at this, you ask the questions, why did all of this happen?
Yeah.
I mean, why did all these things happen? Well, first of all, when you're looking at a long-term care product, the insurance industry has to project that cost of care 20, 30 years, and maybe in some cases 40 years out. That's a very difficult thing to do.
Particularly today.
Exactly. And so that's just one of the reasons, or main reasons, I think, because of the risk factors involved, we didn't have enough of data to substantiate what the cost of care would be in the future. So today, we have more data, and I think you're going to see less and less of rate increases in the future because we have more information than we've had before in the past.
And they've taken the hit.
And they've taken that.
They know. And also,
Exactly.
is it fair to say that with this kind of insurance, people don't cancel or lapse?
That's right.
They keep the insurance?
Actually, we have some good numbers on that. You're right. The persistency for long-term care is about 97, 98%.
Oh my God.
It is one of the most widely held products out there in the insurance industry.
Okay.
Simply because of that. Once you got it, I mean, you know,
You struggle,
the
but you're going to
policyholder
keep
says,
it.
I'm keeping it, yeah.
Yes.
And I'll make adjustments if I need to in order to keep this policy in force.
Okay.
Because I think when you buy this policy, you're a planner, you're planning ahead. You know what the cost of care would be. You may have had a situation in a family where a mom or a dad or a relative or a friend was in a long-term care situation, and you understood what the costs would be. So even though that premium goes up a little bit, most policyholders kept the policy going.
Well, I would think
Yeah.
basically, based upon what you've given me as far as the typical monthly expenses, that the policy is inexpensive relative to what it's going to cost you if you don't have insurance. Am I correct or not?
You are very correct. Yeah, you're very correct.
So
on
I
that.
tell folks you're going to pay now or you're going to pay later,
Right.
but it's going to be about how you pay.
It's more of a leveraging concept, the way I look at it. You pay an annual premium, okay, to have a huge benefit or pool of dollars. So, of course, if your premium is $3,000 a year, obviously in 10 years, you may put in $30,000, but your benefit may be as much as $200,000 or $300,000. And so, when you look at it, you know, cost per, say, $1,000 of coverage, you're probably paying about 10 cents for your coverage. So
I think I just think that's the way to
reasonable.
go. I think it's
pretty
very reasonable.
Yeah, when we do the calculations. But you mentioned the word lapse rates too. To get back to what happened there, lapse rates, when the insurance companies were putting this together, they were expecting people to terminate or get rid of the policy.
Because people do.
So about 8 or 9%. And in the industry, basically on the lapse rates, you'll see there's less than 1%. So,
that is absolutely unbelievable. I mean, 1%.
And the other problem too that happened was the interest rates. When we ran into the recession in 2008, what happened there was the insurance companies, when they take your premium, they can't invest it in the stock market.
Right.
They have to put it in a safe investment, like either a T-bill, a treasury note, or a bond or something, and they're not getting 8, 9, 10, 12% like they did
Right.
in the
Right,
past.
right.
So today they're only getting maybe 2, 3, or 4%. Well, it made it hard on the industry, and I mean on us, because we're not seeing that kind of rate of return on our CDs or savings or checkbooks.
Right, exactly,
So, yeah.
exactly.
So that was a major impact as well. Yeah.
You think those days, given the fact that the Fed is definitely going to raise rates,
That's going to stabilize the industry.
that's going to stabilize,
That will
because that was
stabilize the
my
industry.
worry. I said, how long is the Fed going to keep rates unrealistically low and decimate the insurance industry?
Correct. So,
Okay.
so even a 0.25% probably would make a huge difference in the overall reserves of an insurance company. Right. And then I think we moved along here on another chart. We'll talk about the marketplace.
Okay,
So let's talk about
that.
the number of companies that were in the business back, say, 7, 8 years ago or so, was about 45 carriers.
Okay.
Okay. Today, this last year, at the end of the year, there were about 15 carriers that were actively still involved in the long-term care
My
business.
goodness.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
But those carriers are what we call the big carriers, or will be in the business. Some of the top of those 15 carriers are shown down there below. Things like Northwestern, Genworth, Mutual of Omaha, Transamerica, Nationwide, State Farm, Bankers. Those are some of the companies that will be in the industry because it is a core part of their company. Okay, so
I'm pleased to see that Genworth is still here.
Genworth is there. It's a very strong company.
Mutual of Omaha.
And we're going to talk a little bit about that because there were some
Okay.
impacts to those as well. So let's take a look here at the big picture. So
Okay.
here, I just want to kind of give you a flavor, an idea. Long-term care is a big industry. When you look at that number here, the amount of value of all the policies are out there, we're almost talking $2 trillion.
That's a lot.
So yeah, it is a lot. And when you look at the number of claims that are paid out down below, John Hancock on a per day basis pays out almost $5 million a day on claims.
My goodness, from people that are using the policy.
Policies, exactly.
Okay.
Genworth, about $6.2 million per day. Those two carriers basically were in the business over 40 years. So they've got a long history. They've been doing long-term care, and basically Hancock has about 1.4 million policyholders.
Okay.
Genworth about 1.2
Now, is
million.
Hancock okay? Is that all?
We're going to talk about that.
Okay,
We're going to talk
that's fine.
about that here a little bit further.
Okay.
But just to look at the bottom, and the last bullet on that chart there is about the total claims paid last year in 2016, almost $12 billion in claims from the insurance
from people
carriers.
that need it.
Than people that need it. And
Oh, my
Michelle,
gosh.
I'll just kind of give you a little bit of an example. Just on our office alone, we have pretty close to 2,500 policyholders, and we have about 85 individuals on claim
Right now.
right now. And the good news is every one of those are paying the claims. Every one of those
Okay,
companies are paying.
okay.
And it's not just one carrier. We have like 15 different companies that we can use, but every different carrier is paying a claim.
Okay.
And we have no issues with that. Contrary to what sometimes the news media says that, a carrier is not paying. Well, it depends on, the type of benefits that policy was offering and things like that. So it makes a big difference. But we've experienced no problems in claims. So
Oh, great,
we're,
great.
and the clients are extremely happy.
Okay.
Extremely happy. So
Well, that is the bottom line. That is what counts.
exactly.
Are
Exactly.
they happy?
Correct, and we help them with that. We help them get started in their claims paperwork, and it makes it, because it's a stressful time when a loved one, if it's a spouse, it goes into a long-term care situation.
Oh my God, yes. But isn't one of the beauties of having a private plan that you can stay at home?
Bingo.
Bingo.
Bingo. In fact, out of all the
Okay.
policies out there today, about 80% of the claims are used in a home care environment.
So, as opposed to Medicaid, where you have to go into an
To an
institutional
institution
environment
for them to pay.
for them to pay, you have the freedom to stay in your home independent
Correct.
with a check coming.
Right, and the cost of care is going to be a little bit less than it would be if you were in assisted living or in a nursing home environment.
Okay.
So let's move along to what we call the industry updates.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Okay.
What happened in 2016?
What
It was an
did-
active year.
I mean, I sent you, I think, a couple of emails like, what?
Right. It was a very active year in 2016. The year started out with MedAmerica, which wasn't a big company. They were a smaller company. Their marketing wasn't as big as the Genworth or Mutual of Omaha, and they decided that they were going to cease selling their long-term care product in February of 2016. And a lot of the carriers, when they get out of the market, they're getting out, but yet they're studying it, and they may re-enter the market. We've seen that happen before.
Oh, really? Okay.
Well, yeah, Transamerica is a good example. They got out of the marketplace, studied the market, and then jumped back into the long-term care market. So, and they're very active in that right now. So, even though they may have left for a while, that doesn't mean they're left for good.
Okay, good.
And by the way, for the audience, just to let you know, if you didn't see a company on there that you have, say you have a company that's different than what's on our charts, even though that company goes out of business, that carrier is still responsible for paying a claim.
Okay.
So they still have a long-term care department, and in fact, Penn Treaty is one of our carriers that has been out of business and for many, many years, for at least 10 years, and yet all those claims are still being paid.
That's wonderful.
So you never have to be concerned or worried about that.
Okay.
Okay, so I just wanted to make that clear, make sure everybody understood that.
Excuse me.
Isn't that- So let's talk here about Genworth.
Let's do.
Genworth
Let's talk
did
about
have
Genworth.
they had a little bit of a problem financially. The CEO of Genworth decided it was time to make some changes there, and so he had a company called the China, what was it, Oceanwide Holdings. They came in to Genworth and said, we're interested in long-term care in China. China has a bigger problem than we do. They have like 250 million individuals that are over the age of 65, where we have about 47 million.
Oh.
And so they've got a big problem when it comes to long-term care and taking care because of their population.
And also historically, because I've lived in China, the children are responsible for taking care of their parents, and the children are now cityfied, and they're doing their thing, and parents are not at the top of the totem pole.
Right.
So that's a major
That
issue
is
over
correct.
there.
That's a major
It's
issue.
a major issue.
So they came to Genworth with a nice offering.
Okay.
And
I would say so.
Of about $1.2 billion to get Genworth to expand maybe their product line, to keep things going, because they were very much impressed with what they have, their product, their infrastructure, and their financials. And so as a result, we're probably going to see a stronger company there.
Oh, I definitely think you
in
will.
the future. So
I think you will.
And that happens. That happens quite a bit. Then we had some good news here. There's a new company that entered the market. It's called National Guardian Life.
Okay.
They came into the marketplace in July of 2016, and they actually brought back some of the old things that we don't normally see anymore, like lifetime benefits.
Really?
Correct. And some of the older policies that were written, 20,
Yes,
30
yes.
years ago, they had a lifetime benefit, meaning once you went on claim, that policy would continue to pay until
Till you expired.
you expired. Right, exactly.
And how are they doing?
They're doing very well. In fact, we've had a couple of underwriting cases that we've looked at, and they're underwriting. They're very hungry and kind of getting started.
Yes.
So that's something that
I think that's significant. Now, is that for individuals?
it's individuals.
Great,
It's
great,
individuals.
great, great, great.
Individuals.
Okay.
And then, of course, the federal government, just to kind of give you an idea, they had a little bit of a problem last year. They had to increase, the government had a plan that they put in place in 2000.
The government did?
The government did. It was managed by John Hancock and MetLife, and it offered a long-term care plan to government employees.
Really?
Yes.
I did not know. See? Don't know
Yes.
everything.
There were about, out of the 22 million, I guess, however, that are out there that considered, federal employees, whether it's postal workers or government workers, they have about 270 some thousand, policy holders.
Really?
Quite a few, but still, when you look at the numbers, it's a small percentage compared to the number of, eligible
Was this
individuals.
subsidized by the government?
It was not.
They paid it out of pocket?
They paid it out of pocket, and
Wow.
The thing about it is they didn't have all of the features that a traditional long-term care policy would have, and so it was pretty much a simplified underwriting sort of thing. But they found out that they ran into some problems as well. So they had to increase their premiums, and they had like an average premium increase of about 80%.
Oh, that's,
now, let's talk about that for a minute.
Okay.
When you bought this policy from the government almost 20 years ago, whenever it was, the premiums were extremely low. So it was very cost effective. So if a 40 or 50-year-old person bought that policy, and it would be like $400 or $500 a year, believe it or not,
Oh my
that
gosh.
premium would have increased to $900. Well, Michelle, you wouldn't be able to buy that policy today for $8,000 or $9,000 a year. So it's still a very good bargain, even though they had a rate increase.
So
you
it's
have to be
still
careful.
available to federal government employees?
It is, but I think that contract comes up for rebidding this year, so I'm not sure how that's going to go.
We'll see how that's going to work. Okay.
And then we have a company called LifeSecure. LifeSecure discontinued sales for individual sales, like mom and pop, but they're still in the work site and still in the multi-life environment. So they're offering it more to businesses. And Michelle, we're seeing a lot more of that today than we had in the past.
I'm glad to hear that. Now, explain to me how that works.
Great. Where an employer has basically other benefits like 401ks and dental and all other types of products there, they wanted to bring in a long-term care product. And in fact, I just did a large case here in the Inglewood area where we brought in a long-term care product, and the employer bought a base plan for every employee.
The employer.
Now you ask your question, why would he do that?
Why?
And the reason is, good reason is, he wanted to retain his good employees. Because of the business that he's in, that employee could go and find other jobs elsewhere because he was marketable.
Okay.
In this case, he wanted to retain. So retention was a big thing for this employer.
Okay.
And it's working.
That's great.
Yes.
Are there any tax benefits to the business?
There are.
Okay.
He happens to be a C corporation, and as a result, he can take that as a tax deduction. So for a business person to do that, it's huge.
That is major.
It's huge.
That's good to know. I like that.
And then we get to the bottom when we talk about John Hancock, and you asked me about John Hancock. Actually, they discontinued sales in December of 2006. Just a couple of weeks ago. What happened there? I mean, why did John Hancock, one of the leaders in the industry, pull out of the market? Well, again, first of all, John Hancock is really owned and operated by a Canadian company.
Right, I know that. I know that they're owned by a Canadian company, and I love Canadians.
Manulife. So anyway, Manulife decided that it was time to take a little break and study the market, again, just like Transamerica did several years ago, and to see what's out there. The product that they had on the street was a little bit more complex and complicated to explain, and their sales wasn't where they wanted it to be. And so as a result, they had to
streamline and reset
exactly. So they're looking at solutions as well to
Okay.
streamline that.
Okay, got it.
Okay.
Got it. So, what went wrong?
I know, I should say that real quick. Let's say, well, again, it all comes down to when you purchase these products, you know, the insurance company, again, they're on the hook basically because they're trying to look into the future, and it's very difficult to predict what happens in the future. You know, 30, 40 years. It's just difficult to do. And so again, all those things we talked about before that I had on this slide here, things like persistency, that was a key thing. I mean, more Americans are holding on to their policies. Things like lapse rates, you know, the same sort of thing. Lapse rates, basically, no one wants to give up that policy. The insurance industry just missed the mark on that. They
didn't know people were going to hold their policies.
They did not. And then, of course, the interest rates.
I would. Well, I mean, you know it's going to happen.
Exactly. Okay. And what about the interest rates?
Right.
Who knew in 2008 what was going to happen?
Who knew?
You know, I mean, it tanked, and so it took a big hit on the insurance industry as well as the American and the consumers. I mean, you know, we're still recovering from that.
Right, we still are.
We're still not there.
Right,
and the Fed's trying to make it work.
And
this year,
we're hopeful.
We'll see that increase this year, hopefully. And of course, the biggest thing is longevity.
Which is we're living longer, much longer.
We're living longer. Because of advancements in medicine,
in
technology.
Fact, the population group over 100 years old is the fastest growing group in America. 100 is no longer a novelty. I remember, what's that guy, the gentleman that wrote backwards that was on television, but he was always honoring centenarians, and now there are just so many of them, it just, you know, and they're living very independent lives in many cases.
I think the last Census Bureau report that we got showed that in 2016, there were pretty close to 100,000 Americans that were age 100. 100,000.
I mean, really?
Yeah, it's happening. It's happening.
But you know, it's a good thing if you can be 100 and be healthy.
Exactly. And so, you know, how does that fit into this puzzle?
Right.
It's just like, well, the longer we live, the greater the chances that we will need some sort of long-term care plan in the future, hopefully.
Did the Census Bureau track the number of centenarians that were in institutional settings?
I'm not sure about
Curious
that.
about that.
That's a good something.
Because I do keep up, kind of, and I see a lot of them being honored and recognized, but they're not living independently, which means that they are in an institutional environment, and I suspect that many of them are on Medicaid.
Probably so.
Yes, which means the federal government and the state is picking up that tab.
Correct.
Yeah.
They are.
Yeah.
They are.
Okay.
So basically, what went wrong, they got it wrong. I mean,
Yeah,
they just
yeah,
got it
they
wrong.
got it
but,
wrong.
but we have more data today to help us, to help the insurance industry stabilize the rates so we don't see rate increases. And I think the baby boomers are driving, you know, they're letting the insurance carriers know, you know, what they want to see. And so, yeah, kind of moving to the next chart here.
Okay,
This
can
what
we
we call
see the long-term care and review, a new paradigm?
a new paradigm.
We can
Yeah,
see
let's
that.
take a look at that.
Okay, there we go.
So what's happened out there? Well, we've seen a major change in the traditional long-term care planning. We've seen a lot of things what we call hybrid planning, and so that's becoming a hot topic. Meaning that if you see this word hybrid, there's different ways to look at it. It can be called either a combination plan or an asset-based plan or a linked benefit plan. So in your readings, if you see those things, it all means the same thing.
Okay.
You're combining maybe a life insurance or an annuity type of concept to a long-term care benefit.
Okay, now is that long-term care benefit in the form of a rider, or is it actually an integral part of the product?
It is an integral part of the product.
Okay, got
and
it.
typically what happens between a hybrid plan and a traditional plan, the distinction there is on a traditional plan, you pay an annual premium.
Okay.
Okay? You pay an annual premium. And so that annual premium is every year until you use the policy.
Okay.
And then when you trigger that policy, then you no longer pay for it. So
Right.
it's paid up. So it's not
Okay.
something you would pay continuously. So when you use the policy, your policy is paid up, you go on claim. Okay?
Simple.
Premium's simple.
Simple.
On a hybrid plan, if you never use the policy for long-term care and you die, that policy benefit either extends to your spouse or to the estate or children or whatever, so you don't lose anything. So this way, for example, if you reposition some money, and usually you're repositioning dollars, it could be for IRA dollars, for example. So if you had an IRA and you wanted to reposition, say maybe $100,000, if you had that in your IRA, you could reposition it for long-term care. You would get maybe $300,000 of long-term care benefit and $300,000 of a death benefit.
That's nice.
So if you never use that policy, the estate's going to get tax-free about $300,000.
That's sweet.
Exactly, and we like that.
I
That's a great
like
cut.
that.
Now, not everybody can do that.
I understand, because you do
So-
have to have assets.
You have to have some assets
You
to
have
do
to have
that.
something to do that.
But it's a great solution to that individual that has maybe IRA dollars, and we can use IRA dollars. We have a company on here that will allow us to use IRA dollars.
So that is available
It
as
is
a pot
available.
of money.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay.
And so that's kind of the hybrid concept on
Okay.
how that works, and we're seeing a big upswing in that marketplace.
I like that. I like it. I do. I like the IRA especially. So what Americans would like is a simple product that's easy to use and understand, a blended product that covers chronic illness, long-term care, benefits, return of premiums, continuous pay options, death benefits, if not used, tax incentives, federal tax deductions, no premium increases. That would be nice.
That would be nice.
And the use of IRAs with no penalty to pay for a long-term care policy.
Yeah, in fact, that is something that's basically being looked at in Congress. I mean,
They
they're
should.
looking
They
at that.
gotta
need-
know. They know they're getting old. Of course,
They
they're
are.
well paid, but you know,
They
they're
are.
getting old.
But isn't that a great solution?
I think
to
it
use
is.
IRA dollars to pay for your long-term care
I
premium
think, you
with
know
no
what,
penalty.
without it, because we're running out of time,
I
and I
know.
want to make sure they have your phone number. Given the fact that we're looking at a windfall from the IRS taking money out of these tax qualified plans for people 70 and a half, there's money. There's going to be so much money, it's mind-boggling. There is going to be money in the Treasury. So why not consider President Trump using some of this money to pay for people's long-term care, allowing them to use that money for themselves? What about that?
What a great solution, you know.
I'm so smart.
Maybe President Trump will be viewing this.
Maybe he will be, or one of his
And
advisors.
yes.
To know that America is in trouble. It's deeper than a wall. We're sick, and we're not dying. And this is a venue. Give us your phone number, please.
Well, Michelle, my phone number is area code 937, and that's 294-1415.
Say
And
it again.
That's 937-294-1415.
And for those of you that have watched this amazing show, he's the man. I'm so serious. I'm not the expert. You go to your experts. You remember what I talked about in one of my previous shows? You don't know it all. This is a specialty, but it's something that you need to know. And you want to ask for Randy. Tell him you saw the show, and he was just so sharp. And he really is. He taught me everything I know about it. But again, I'm not the expert. I'm just the go-to person who's going to send you to him. So keep that in mind as you think about long-term care. How do I feel about it? Passionately. That's how I feel about it, because the alternatives are Medicaid, which is for poor people, and you will be poor when they finish with you. Life insurance, not life insurance, but long-term care insurance, or you pay for it yourself, called GoFundMe. Okay, it's more than a website. It's actually a concept, because you will be paying if you have this need, and the statistics are very clear. So I thank you for being a part of The Power of Money, this segment about the state of long-term care 2017 and what lies ahead. I hope you'll take this information, assess it carefully, and make a decision between eating out all the time and taking care of your future, because I am not real sure that your children are going to be able to do this one. You take care. God bless you. We'll talk soon. Bye-bye.